Hello and welcome to part 2 of this video series on remotely bootstrapping NixOS and the nix-config, including Nix secrets. In the previous video, we looked at a demonstration about how the process works and then talked about the high-level steps. There's already been some great comments and suggestions on part 1, and I'll be refining the solution as I work on the upcoming videos so that it will be even better by the time we go over the details. Thanks for all of the productive input. Also, one of you kindly commented that I should provide better context about the objective of this project. So to clarify, the goal here is to automate installation of NixOS on bare metal machines in my home network. I'm not currently deploying to cloud infrastructure, so those scenarios are out of scope for the time being. On with part 2, let's look at some of the tools we'll use. First up is NixOS Anywhere, which allows users to remotely install NixOS to a specified target host with a single command, unattended. There's support for installing a target that has a NixOS installer present or to a target that supports Linux's kexec tool, which is provided on most distros these days. The latter scenario is typically only relevant when installing on a target that has a pre-existing non-Nix Linux distribution installed on it. This could be the case when the target's provided by some sort of cloud infrastructure provider that doesn't provide NixOS images yet. NixOS Anywhere importantly also supports installations using the tool disko, which we'll cover shortly. We'll be focusing on hosts booted into a NixOS ISO image, so the prereqs that we need to meet are the source has to be running Nix or NixOS, and the target has to be booted into a NixOS installer image and be accessible over the network. NixOS Anywhere is also flake-based, which means we don't need to clone the code to our source host. Here's a simplified example. We have the nix run command followed by the GitHub path to NixOS Anywhere. We're providing a flake argument that specifies the host we want to build, and we're providing the user and IP of the target host. When I first encountered NixOS Anywhere, I was pretty hopeful that it would solve the entire problem set for my objectives, and while it conveniently handles a substantial part of the process, it stops after NixOS has been successfully installed and the target host rebooted. That's pretty good, all things considered, and I learned a lot just by looking at the source code. So now let's take a look at the next tool, which is a custom NixOS ISO image. I initially started using the official NixOS minimal ISO image, but in version 23.11, the rsync CLI tool wasn't included in it for some reason. And this was problematic because NixOS Anywhere uses rsync to perform part of the install. At the time of developing my solution, there was an open issue number 260 in their repo discussing it. Regardless, we're going to stick with generating our own custom ISO. As a side benefit, we'll also have a convenient means of generating custom ISOs in the future for testing and whatever other scenarios arise. The details of how we do this will be explained in a later video. The next tool is disko, which provides declarative disk partitioning. And I suspect most people don't often perform disk partitioning and formatting tasks. Whenever the time comes to do it, I usually have to pull up a dusty and cobweb-ridden section of my personal wiki to find out what I did last time. Disko provides NixOS with a convenient and powerful means of declaratively handling disk partitioning and formatting requirements. It supports LUKS disk encryption, is handled by NixOS Anywhere, and provides a quick reference of sorts to view your disk configuration specs from within your nix-config. Without this, we would be left using the installation wizard or remembering which CLI tools are for what. Of course, the wizard works well and the tools are great, but I'll happily allow the rust to accumulate on them if I can simply declare what I want and go. For the scope of this project, I decided that I would likely follow a similar partitioning scheme across most, if not all, of my hosts. And furthermore, until I got the installation process stable, I would skip over the LUKS disk encryption aspect and modify the code later on. We'll go over the details of the disko spec I used and the updates required in the nix-config in a following video. The last tool I'll talk about is just, which is quite simply just a command runner that uses make-like syntax but is more elegant. I recently posted a brief video about this, so if you haven't seen that yet, you can find a link to it in the description below. We use it to provide quickly accessible CLI recipes, which will run whatever commands we've defined in a just file. It's kind of similar to running a bash script, but we find that running specific functions from the CLI is simpler using just. That's it for part 2. Keep an eye out for the next one, in which we'll start looking at the various nix-config modifications. Thanks for watching, and remember, the way out is through.